Good afternoon. This is Dr. Princess. This is my 7th attempt at recording this video. I've already recorded a few times, but feel free to like, share, and subscribe to this channel in the event that you find anything that you can use from it. Okay, we're going to go over quite a few topics this afternoon. As you can tell, I'm at a public park and people are funny. So I'm going to wait until they pass by. Okay, so I'm free to speak freely. Let's discuss some of our topics. Has the U.S. failed Europe? This is an international question I have. I called Europe the sleeping giant last week. Europe is the continent that colonized this entire country, known as the United States of America. Yes, I know it's loud. Believe it or not, it is not even 2 o'clock p.m. So that's how you know folks are probably leaving work early. Anyhow, has the U.S. failed Europe? It is quite plausible that they have. Number 2, who's the king and who's the queen? In the new Trump-Musk partnership, this is paramount. In the game of chess, you only have one king. You have one king, and you can have more than one queen. Queens, as you know, are the part that can slide across the board. They can do any number or combination of moves that every other piece on the board is capable of doing. In other words, a queen can move to just about any square, for the most part, in an event to protect the king. At all costs, you must protect the king. And I know that there were jokes last week of King Trump, but the question I had last week was, who's the real king? Because while the king that is alleged to be the king may undoubtedly have all the power needed or required or more than what's necessary to run a country, he doesn't have all the money. And the other person may have all the money in the world, but there's no proof that they can move a crowd similar to like a cult, as in Elon Musk. And so the question remains, who's the real king? Because power is very little without money. As we all know, there's a number of bankruptcies that the current president has undergone. And he's under millions of dollars of litigation right now, if not at least $1 billion. And in the case of Elon Musk, prior to this week, he was the richest man in the world. He still may be, with $438 million. $438 billion, pardon me. Okay, he had enough money for 15 countries, if not more than that. But at the end of the day, he didn't have the power to move a crowd in a cult-wise fashion. He didn't have the power to say jump, and folks are like, how high do you want us to jump? How long would you like us to jump? And able to get folks to wear his gear. What gear? The MAGA gear. Hats, shirts, okay? The next topic, so this is technically topic 3, the conversation of excess and waste, okay? It's a federal government conversation. There's massive layoffs. We will go over each department closer to the end of the video, but there are just as many, if not more, corporate layoffs at this point than there have been federal government layoffs. So where is the excess and waste? Is the excess and waste related to truly the budget in the federal government, which is in the trillions? Or is it related to the spending that some make off frivolous spending? Does anyone know that Elon Musk makes $5 million a day? I'm not sure exactly doing what, but every other profession I know doesn't. If they're lucky, if they're making $5 million a year, unless they're maybe like an internet grifter or a public speaker who gets multi-million-dollar contracts. But for the working class or the upper class, usually that's somewhere between $40,000 and $250,000 a year. But by no means do I know anyone personally making $5 million a year. Even if you know a person who makes $1 or $2 million a year, what the question becomes is, if they made $5 million a year, incredible. But the question is not about the dollar amount. The question is about in the time frame. This person makes $5 million a day. Where's the $5 million a day coming from? Does anyone want to take a stab at that? Perhaps if you get rid of enough jobs, then the income that other folks have earned can go wherever you'd like it to go. Does anyone want to attack the $80 million theft of the New York Treasury 2 weeks ago? Eric Adams' face was the news of New York just 2 weeks ago. But no one wants to talk to me about the $80 million that was removed from the New York Treasury the same week. What made the news and stayed on the news was his face, not the amount of money that was taken from the state that he supposedly governs. Has anybody considered that there might be something in alignment with the other piece? I have no idea whether or not Eric Adams is guilty or innocent, but allegedly, based on the charges, he might absolutely be guilty of such crime. But the question is, what's going on with the $80 million taken from the Treasury? That's the question no one wants to ask. Who handed over the keys to the Treasury of New York? So when we talk about excess and waste, we should really consider the money that spontaneously appears to shift from state governments to federal governments, the funding that's frozen for programs that we'll go over later and goes to the federal government. Perhaps we discuss the ambiguity in the Dodge contract, cutting excess and waste, ensuring that no taxpayer funds essentially are being misused, mismanaged, or wasted, doesn't give us any transparency on the job descriptions and how Mr. Musk gained his contract. The fourth topic are the people turning against their alleged king. I'm very well aware of the town hall meetings, the local town hall meetings. But are they really, really turning away from their king? Let's briefly discuss the attacks on small businesses. Everyone wants to talk about oligarchy. Currently, if your business has less or fewer than 20 employees, in addition to that, makes less than $5 million a year, you don't have to report your name as the owner of said company. Well, what kind of companies typically make less than $5 million a year? You guessed it, small businesses. So now, if you have an LLC that wasn't in your name, not only do you have the other components of the legacy or beneficiary transparency, but you also must list your name and identify who you are. It's just another way that the federal government is keeping up with who has what in this country. You probably should ask yourself, what will they use with this information? Or what will they do with this information? How will they use it? Pardon me. Okay, at this point, it is overdue for the American to become a critical thinker. So this is why this channel exists. Let's talk about the effects of racism, division, or white supremacy. Unfortunately, I know this all too well. Doesn't matter where you're from, where you live. This is an international reality for people of the diaspora. And if you're in the 10%, supposed to be a leader, you are to assist in helping us move forward. Regardless of our current position, the real reality of oppression, we're not ignoring those things. It's just a matter of knowing that the real battle might not be racism at all. There are just as many folks who don't look like me, who have lost their jobs. Well, people of all shades have lost contracts, jobs, opportunities. You just so happen to be a double minority if you're also born female. How do you hire, or how will you act under the new pressure? If you run a company, corporation, or any other entity, the government has forced the hand of most, if not all, corporations to eliminate any and all traces of DEI, not just in the wording, but in their behavior. Many members of DEI, whatever that means, okay? Diversity, equity, inclusion does not mean black, but hey, this is one of many things that it has aspired to, people aspire it to mean. They also aspire it to mean women, when it covers veterans, people of all shades, people over the age of 55, and people under 25. Ageism, reverse ageism, gender, race, religion, ethnicity, and yes, race and ethnicity are different. These are many, many ways in which we are divided, but we should be able to be inclusive in a work environment. It's not about who you hire or meeting a quota. It's about how you treat people. And if this gives you the freedom to treat people the way you always felt about them, you have done what others have done. You have fired unfairly, phased out, or just simply never hired someone. Regardless of tenure, people have been discriminated against more and more. Let's talk about the military generals, for example. There are 4 and counting, if not 5, 4-star military generals who were let go in the past 7 to 8 business days, if that. And the most recent, African-American male, early 60s, 4-star Army general, fired and replaced by a 3-star Army general who was retired. Don't know his age, didn't bother to look up his name. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name of the black man who was fired either. But the article was wanting us to focus on the rank and the fact that there was no real explanation for termination of the 4-star general other than DEI. The president actually came out and said, I had to get rid of him, unfortunately, because of my stance on DEI. I wish him the best of luck. But here's the part that really kicked me in the gut. This guy was hired by this president. Unbelievable. To me, anyway. Shocking, to say the least. So when you think about that, you realize that some of the hiring freezes, lack of hiring, or firing is not really based on rank. It truly is based on race and ensuring that the workplace is not diverse. The principles of diversity have been removed intentionally in some cases because that's what this administration feels is best. The next topic is harsher immigration. When we talk about ICE invasions, multiple countries at this point have had or received plane deportations. The question becomes, what is the extent of the deportations? And is this right or wrong? Now, I'm not here to say if it's right or wrong. I don't know. But I did learn something that apparently if you immigrated or moved to this country but you don't have your documentation, it's not a criminal offense. So when we call them illegal immigrants, we have to be careful to know what that actually means. It's my understanding that this is a civil offense payable by fine and other forms of punishment. It is not a criminal offense. However, as the young lady pointed out in her video, once you are deported, if you attempt to return and get caught, that is when the criminal offense begins. So she called it a self-fulfilling prophecy. She said, this is not a crime, but because of the fact that people may get caught up in this trap, if they accidentally return or if they intentionally return, now it's a criminal offense and they get caught up in the criminal system. The next topic, what type of pressure do we think has been forced on CEOs to enforce or ensure that all companies get into the anti-DEI or mandatory return to office, mandatory anti-diversity campaigns? How do we think these companies will be impacted in the end, if at all? Right now, it appears that their wealth, popularity, and allure could be rapidly declining. Yes, I saw the article about Starlink last night. And I understand that Americans have finally been informed of why Elon Musk required firings of the FAA staff, some of them, because he set up for Starlink. So now Starlink is supposed to have some ties to the international airport system as well as space. Let's see how this all unfolds and how America will untie her shoelaces, called Elon Musk and the federal government, from one another. Because once you weave the web too deeply, sometimes it's like chewing gum and you have to cut the shoelaces out. So this is going to be more of a painful end than I initially thought it would be, because too much has been intertwined with one man's name. But what type of pressure do we think has been forced on these CEOs? I mean, we could talk about Meta, we could talk about Amazon, we could talk about many, many companies and how their policies were quickly or rapidly changed. Zuckerberg never looks happy in his photos. But nobody has stood up to these people yet. I wish that we had one person who said, I'm willing to tell the truth, even if my life possibly depends on it. What are these people facing? Has anyone told any of these CEOs that their wife's life is on the line, their girlfriend, their kid? Because these are the type of threats that a mob would make. We've had people become peeled from their desks with less than 15 minutes notice in many departments across this country. The lack of humanity and respect is deplorable, Okay, that's just my personal opinion. But it is unfettered, unbelievable, beyond shocking. This is not the America in which I was raised. And I'm okay with saying that. And I'm a millennial. But at the end of the day, what type of threats are on people's lives to keep up this facade that they're all on the same page? If you look at it throughout history, torture, violence, and the like are usually what keep powerful people in alignment with one another. Threats, real or unreal, this is what I think is going on behind the scenes. I have a lot behind why I believe this. As we continue, we can talk about Mr. Musk losing allegedly around $100 billion as Tesla gave up its trillion-dollar company status amid the sell-off of electric vehicles. I believe it was Sunday night maybe. I don't know. I think it was over the weekend, and I started discussing this on Monday. It's been such a tragic series of events this week to get this video out. But at the end of the day, the inventors of Tesla have spoken out against Elon Musk. He was not the originator of the company. I did not know that until this week. I have since educated myself. Tesla was founded by 2 engineers. One was forced out in 2008, I believe, and the other one left after the first one left. Not just leaving CEO, not just leaving the board, but leaving the company altogether. And then within 6 months, after an interim CEO in 2009, is when Elon Musk made himself the CEO of Tesla. These men founded the company in 2003-ish, 2002, 2003. Elon Musk was influential in the form of financier, okay, or the top fundraiser for the company, and he sat on the board of trustees. He was fined $20 million. I can't remember the exact offense, but he was fined $20 million and forced to remove himself as a member of the board, but he's been able to operate as the CEO ever since. He paid the $20 million fine. So he's done some illegal or some irreparable harm to the company Tesla before it went public. The company just went public in 2021. As soon as it went public, it made it to the S&P Index 500. Unbelievable statistics this man has for himself. But is money supposed to be the end-all, be-all? Number one, rhetorical questions. And number two, should one country rely so heavily on one man's money? So the reason I said, has the U.S. PO'd Europe, is because I think the answer is yes. You have Europeans selling their Teslas. Americans are still driving them, surprisingly. Although I did see some graffiti on the back of one last weekend. This man lost $100 billion. That's real wealth loss. Now, from $438 billion to $338 billion, his 13 kids still have plenty of money to roll around in. Grandkids too, for several generations to come with the correct investments. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is the loss of wealth and the fact that if enough people turn away from this person, perhaps we can be a bit more strategic and we can get away from the harm that is inevitable before it harms the country beyond repair. Okay, so the continent in general of Europe, including Germany, France, and of course we know that there is a lot of disharmony with the United States and UN and the nations within the UN right now, unfortunately. Okay, we've already left WHO. We're having disharmony within the UN because our administration is taking the side of Russia in the Russian-Ukraine war, which is completely different from the position the previous president took. But not only that, Russia has never been a widely known U.S. ally. Neither has Russia been a part of the EU, the top, 7 countries of the Union in Europe. Russia has always done their own thing. They have always been seen as largely dictatorship type country. And we can say a few more other things about their government, but at the end of the day, the other countries in Europe that we supposedly are allied with do not approve of the way this is being handled. This is why Macron flew over here last weekend to meet with our current administration from France. Haven't heard any meetings recently with the UK, but we have already met with France, Russia, Ukraine, and because we're kicking up smoke in the Israeli-Hamas war, our country has already met with the current Prime Minister of Israel.